We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet to share these conversations on the Vegan Compass podcast.
We extend our respect to elders past and present, as well as any of our listeners and guests. Hello and welcome to the Vegan Compass podcast, unveiling truths, inspiring change. We are your hosts, Rick Allport and Mackenzie Cross.
From wherever you're listening, please be sure to like and subscribe to support this podcast. Now to the episode.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Vegan Compass podcast. We are your co-hosts, Rick Allport and Mackenzie Cross. And I just wanted to have a little shout out this morning and say if you're really enjoying the podcast, it would mean so much to us if you could share it with a friend, a family member, someone who you think will benefit from listening to our amazing guests.
Well, how are you this morning, Mackenzie? It is morning and it's not normal for us to be awake, and this is like the second podcast we've done in the morning.
Yes, I'm good. We do usually record in the evening, so we were up early recording because we spoke to Joe, who was in Canada. So yes, very excited to get into our next episode. Who are we talking to, Rick?
Well, this one's going to be interesting, and it's going to be a really big learning curve for me as well. We have Nikki from Beagle Freedom Australia. Now, this is something that I am very fascinated about, and I want to learn so much more. So, Nikki, I'm going to start with two questions. Who are you, and what do you do?
My name is Nikki, and I'm the co-founder of Beagle Freedom Australia. What we do is specifically take in and rehabilitate and rehome animals from research facilities. So that could be, we mostly do dogs and cats, but we're open to taking any type of animal.
Wow, it's pretty heavy work, I guess. What happens in the labs to animals is something that not a lot of people get to see. So could you take us back to the early 2000s and what first led you to start rehoming beagles and scent hounds from labs?
Well, I did what we're not supposed to do, and I bought a puppy from the trading post, and I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that, and then I learned a whole lot of stuff about backyard breeders and puppy farms and all that sort of stuff. And then I learned about beagles and what they're used for in research. At the time, they were one of the most puppy farmed breeds in Australia, as well as being used for research and all kinds of things. And I had this puppy, which I loved, and I quickly learned that she needed a friend, and they do really well in pairs, but I definitely did not want to go and buy a puppy again. I wanted to do the right thing, so I looked at adoption, and I found Beagle Rescue Victoria and adopted through them. And just from there, I started helping out them with everything that I could possibly help them with. I'm a graphic designer, so I started, doing websites and helping them in that way. And it just sort of snowballed into where we are today.
That's just amazing. And I sort of, because we both do animal rescue, but street cats mainly, and it's just an interesting, different avenue for you to go down. So taking animals out of labs and doing the whole rehoming process. But Beagle Freedom Australia officially launched in 2013, but you'd already been doing lots of work for years before that. What was the moment that made you decide to formalise the organisation? What sort of triggered that thought?
We'd been doing a few sort of cruelty cases through Beagle Rescue, and there was like a dog trainer that we'd been working with, and she happened to also sit on an animal ethics committee for a research facility, and they were looking to rehome their colony of animals, and they had been doing it locally but was struggling because it was sort of like a small town area and there was not a lot of call, that people didn't really want to have beagles. So she'd worked with us on these other cases and asked us if we wanted to help, and we were like, absolutely. So we got our first 2 beagles from her recommendation from them to work with us, and we quickly learned that these guys needed their own specific dedicated team of people to help them transition, and first of all to help them be released, because they weren't getting released. They might have been coming out here and there through family members of people that worked at the facilities, but there was no real process for them, and there was no real avenue for them to come out and to be adopted. So we thought we need to start it up. The Beagle Freedom Project in America was sort of kicking off at the time, and they were really having a lot of success. So we got in touch with them, with Shannon Keith and Kevin Chase at the time, and we talked to them, said we want to start up here in Australia, and they were really supportive, and so we could use the name and the logo and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we sort of ran with it from there, and here we are today.
Wow.
It was interesting because our last guest, Joanne MacArthur from We Animals, actually mentioned Shannon Keith. When we said we're talking to someone from Beagle Freedom, she went, "Oh, Shannon?" And it's like, no, this is Nikki from here in Australia.
I saw Joanne MacArthur when she came out a few years ago. She did a speaking tour, and yeah, she's wonderful.
Yeah, we were very excited to talk to her. She has a lot to share. But I guess bringing it back to beagles used in laboratories, I guess this is quite a hidden industry. Many Australians are shocked to learn that animals are still used in medical research here, let alone animals like dogs and cats. What was it like for you to discover that truth?
It's sort of something that I guess like anyone, you think, oh, that doesn't happen here. That happens overseas. But we just sort of slowly kind of realised that it was happening here, through the contact that we had with that dog trainer, and we just thought, oh, maybe it's here, but it's just very small. But the more you sort of look into it, the more you sort of find out. So yeah, we're quite shocked to know that it was happening here as well. But it's also sort of personal, because we were lovers of the breed already, and so it feels a bit personal, because that you're picturing your own personal pets and how they would be in that situation, and it feels really personal.
It would be heartbreaking, and I guess too that connection that you already had with beagles would really break your heart when doing all this work. But why and this is something I've never understood, why are beagles and scent hounds so commonly used in research facilities?
It's the main reason that they make great companion animals. They're friendly, good-natured. They are sort of low maintenance in that they don't require a lot of grooming. Beagles are small and compact, so they don't take up a lot of space, and they live really well in large groups. So, some of the really same reasons that you want them in your home, unfortunately, make them supposed good candidates for research.
That's really sad. So what's involved in rescuing animals from research facilities? I guess it's not something that's easy.
Yeah, first, because there's no sort of mandatory law for the facilities to actually rehome the animals, so it's a bit of a task to work with them. So we try and work with them and build up a good relationship with them, so that they have that trust in us that we're going to do the right thing and help their animals, because believe it or not, they do think that they're helping the animals, and they do love them, so they want the best for them as well. So we sort of have to try and look beyond all that and try and be a little bit diplomatic. And once we sort of earn their trust, I guess, then we set up we have like a non-disclosure in place with most of them, because they don't want their privacy sort of exposed, which is understandable. And then, we take it from there. We get them all vet worked, regardless of if they've been to a vet recently or not. We'll do that anyway. And then we meet them all here, and we find foster carers for them so they can continue to learn about the world before we start looking for homes.
I don't know how you do it. I would want to go and punch people in the face. I take my hat off to you for having the patience and the emotional stability to be able to deal with these people. And I know you say that they say they love them, but I just can't fathom how you could love an animal and submit it to horrid experiments and torture. So kudos to you for being, being able to work with these people without showing anger and disgust at what they do.
Well, I guess it's for the greater good of the animals, right? You can't get the animals out if you don't have a good relationship with these places. So it's kind of that's the aim of the game, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's better than doing raids on these facilities, which other people do.
Well, they did in the 80s. I don't know if you can now with all the security.
They still do.
Oh, okay, cool.
But taking us into the animals themselves, what condition are these animals in when they first arrive, sort of both physically and emotionally?
It varies, just like us people, they all deal with it in their own individual ways. So it varies. Sometimes they're really happy-go-lucky, normal animals coming out, ready to face the world. And sometimes they're a little bit more shy and shut down and anxious. And that's understandable because they haven't known anything other than sort of their main routine, which they've, the older they are, the longer they take to sort of recover emotionally. Physically, most of the time they've had pretty basic vet care. But yeah, like I said before, we take them to the vet as a base to start from, and we try and cover everything they could possibly need medically as well.
You say that you actually, just jumping in here, you said that earlier that you do both dogs and cats.
Yeah.
Do you find which breed or which species is easier to deal with? Because knowing cats, and we've both been street cat rescuers, and the difficulties of rehabilitating street cats, how do the cats cope?
The cats are like a really broad spectrum of personality. So it almost depends on where the facility have sourced their cats from. So sometimes they might find a street cat or something like that. So it'll be a bit more difficult for that cat to adjust on the outside as well. But most of the time they'll breed their own colonies. And so they've had quite good handling. So they're handling them a lot. So they're actually really friendly and really cuddly and really sort of just want to be with people. So yeah, it can be in one extreme or the other, but generally they're all pretty good, and they can do it. They can get there and they can make it.
I'm curious as well, when you're rescuing animals from these facilities, do you have the information about what kind of tests they've been subjected to? I imagine that would be important to know when you're then considering how to rehabilitate them, because I guess there's different levels of maybe cruelty that they've been exposed to.
Well, we know the companies, and so we can have a pretty good guess of what they're sort of doing there, but specific tests we don't ask. It's that sort of thing. If you don't ask, just try and keep it nice and don't ask. But yeah, we can sort of fill in the gaps ourselves. So we do take that into consideration as well. So yeah, you're right.
Can you share a story that captures what it's like to see one of these dogs experience freedom and love for the first time out of the lab and in your care?
So one of the Beagle boys that we have who stayed here at the sanctuary with us, he came out in about 2022, and he was really anxious, like really in the yard. He would just circle and circle and circle non-stop. Like, you could set up like a little time lapse camera and watch him for hours. He would just turn around in circles, and that's whether you're around with them or just if he was by himself. When we were there with him, he would just bark at us, just because he didn't know who we were or what we were doing, what was going on. So he would just bark at us, and we thought this guy's going to be a hard case, so we'll give him some extra time here with us and see how he goes, and that's where it's good having our sanctuary, because we do have the space here to offer a permanent place for any of the animals that we don't think will cope. But Wrinkles is his name, and he sort of adapted pretty well once we introduced him to our other permanent pack here. We thought he would do the same thing and circle around and bark and everything, but he didn't. He stopped doing his circling. He did follow me around and bark at me for quite some time, but it was more of he wanted to know where I was, not because he wanted to be with me, but because he sort of wanted to know where I was so he could get away from me if he needed to.
Could you share us a photo of Wrinkles? Because we'd love to be able to show him to our audience.
Yeah, definitely. He fast forward to now, and if I stray too far out of our daily routine, or if I stand in a spot that I don't normally stand in for too long, he'll have a bark at me, and he'll be like, no, this is not normal. But generally he's completely fine, and he still follows me around everywhere I go, but it's mostly because he wants a piece of Vegemite toast. So every morning when I head into the office with my Vegemite toast, he comes to the door and he gets a piece of Vegemite toast. So that's what follows me around now, which is a much nicer reason.
Oh, I love it.
That's so funny. They're all so unique, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if I love you, but I will take the Vegemite toast, thanks.
Yeah.
So how do you find the right homes for animals coming out of labs? Are there special needs or requirements that potential adoptive families need to consider?
It's pretty hard. The key thing that we always tell people is patience. All you need is patience, and you'll be rewarded. Like, they're not the same as adopting any dog from a shelter. Sometimes they are, and sometimes it's easy, and sometimes it's really straightforward. But a lot of the time it's not. They've never seen a TV. They've never heard the microwave going, someone washing the dishes, or any of that sort of stuff. So everything's new to them. It's like an alien world, basically. So they're not toilet trained. They don't know how to use the doggy door, all that sort of stuff. So we try and teach them as much as we can. But the key is just for the families to give them patience. And most of the time, if you ignore them completely, that's when they'll settle down really quickly.
Well, I never even realized that the toilet training, like that's just, I never even thought about that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Just basic everyday things that they've never experienced.
Yeah, you wouldn't think, they don't toilet train them because obviously they're kennelled for their whole life, so they don't, They most of the time they're out exercising, so it's not like the ones that you see overseas where they're touching grass for the first time. They definitely get to have outside time and exercise in yards and all that sort of stuff. But sometimes if they're on a specific trial, it can run for months and months. And if that during that time they generally don't get exercise, so there's nothing they can do. So they toilet wherever they can. So it's sometimes toileting is quite a challenge for new families. But
wow, okay, that's just mind blowing. Sorry, it's just done my head in. But of course, this leads us now to this next question, which is Beagle Freedom Australia. You don't just rehome animals; you're also pushing for legislative change. So, what kind of laws or protections are you working to improve?
We've been trying to improve the enrichment that they get. So there's no sort of mandatory. A lot of stuff's pretty voluntary, and you can do whatever. There's a basic minimum that you have to do, but it's pretty basic. There's no rehoming, obviously, so we're trying to push that through. It's passed in New South Wales, and we're trying to work on that here in Victoria as well. We're currently sitting on a working group with the Animal Welfare Victoria, part of the state government, to legislate mandatory rehoming here in Victoria. Also, the NHMRC is renewing the code of practice for animals in scientific research. So we'll be submitting all of our suggestions to them as well. And because that piece of code of practice is Australia-wide, so if we can get the changes in there, then it sort of filters down to all the states. But yeah, all the extra enrichment that we're suggesting they need, and prepping them for life outside of a facility as well. So, teaching them to walk on a lead and a harness, and being handled, and having their nails cut, and all that sort of stuff, toilet training that they would learn if they were a pet, and that they would need to help them once they're released to get adopted. That's what we're trying to make it sort of mandatory part of the program for a free facility.
That's really interesting, because I was thinking when you mentioned the new law in New South Wales, so does that mean that all animals used in research have to be rehomed, or they have to try and rehome them? And then, I'll let you answer that part first, and then I have a second part.
Yeah, it was passed, I think, about 2 years ago now. So it's just sort of coming into effect at the moment. It's for cats and dogs only at this point, but they have to rehome them. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So then my second question was, that would be a massive burden on rescue groups if they're not getting some kind of funding or support to take these animals from labs, because you've just explained how much you have to rehabilitate them and teach them about the world. So is that then where the suggestions for the code of practice come in, so that they can be taught these things before they're rehomed, and then it's not such a burden on rescues?
Yeah, so the amount of animals, or dogs and cats specifically, used in Australia isn't as massive as it would be in the States. Like, when you probably heard a few years ago when there was 4,000 beagles that were released from one particular facility. There's nothing of that scale here that I know of. But through the reporting, statistics and everything, we can calculate that the number of dogs and cats used here is not enough to be a huge burden on rescue.
Okay.
But at the same time, yes, we could use some funding to help with that. So it all sort of ends up part of this thing where all rescue, whether it's wildlife, farm sanctuary, companion animals, we all need funding regardless. So that's something that we would push for as well. So funding for these animals as well.
Yeah, it's so needed because, like you say, there are so many rescues out there who are struggling to stay afloat and keep doing all the amazing work that they're doing. So it's really time for governments to stump up and start supporting rescues and sanctuaries and going, hey, we need to do more for animals in our care, more for the sentient beings. But in saying that, have you actually noticed a growing awareness or shift in public sentiment around animal testing and also research over the years?
Yeah, definitely. When we started out, almost everyone we spoke to was shocked and didn't know that animals were being used. Now it seems like, everyone's far more aware. We're still finding people that are getting shocked, but most people are like, yeah, it's happening and we'd love to help. And we've got some great animal advocates in Parliament now, so that helps a lot as well.
Absolutely, that's good to hear. So you recently won the Animals Australia Award for Effective Advocacy at the 2025 Animal Justice Awards. What does that recognition mean to you, and how will the prize money help your work for beagles and other animals that come from labs?
That was a surprise. It's really sort of humbling, I guess, because I know there was a lot of people that were nominated, and a lot of people that I look up to personally, and to be in that sort of category even with them is just mind blowing. So yeah, it means a lot, and it's nice to get recognized for, like, day to day. We just kind of get on with it and do what we do, not for the recognition, but it's still nice to have the recognition. So it just gives you a little boost sometimes. So that was really nice. And the money will go towards, we're in the middle of starting a new project where we're building what we call a real room. So it's basically a real room. So it'll be set up, like a lounge room with maybe a bit of a kitchen area, so that we can teach the animals here about houses. So we'll have a doggy flap so they can learn the doggy flap. We'll have, put the kettle on, they'll watch TV, they'll sit on a couch, they'll do all that sort of stuff. And we can teach them that individually in a really controlled environment. So we'll be putting the money towards that, helping.
Wow, that's so special.
I don't know about you, but I'm tearing up right now.
I got goosebumps.
This is just amazing. And you say, you're surprised that you won the award, but listening to your story, you so deserve this award. So yeah,
thank you.
This is just an amazing journey we've been going on here today. But looking back, what are some of the most meaningful milestones or moments that you're being proud of?
Well, that award is one, definitely. What else? There's lots. The first 2 beagles that we ever received will always sort of stay with us. Ned and Jed were their names. Jed stayed here they both stayed here with us. Ned got, I think, only 2 years out, but Jed was out he was here with us for at least 6 or 7 years. So also recently, last year, I think it was, we took in 36 cats in one go from a facility, which was essentially their entire colony. So they decided to close down their cat research. So that was really nice to be a part of that and know that, there's not going to be any more cats being used at that particular facility. So that's a good one.
That's amazing. I struggled to rehome 4 cats last year. I had 2 of my own and 4 fosters. 6 cats at once is a lot, but we had the rental crisis in Sydney and cost of living crisis. It was so hard to rehome animals, and it still is. So I can't imagine how you managed to rehome 36.
We still have a couple of those cats.
Yeah.
So.
So where can people find you and support the work that you're doing? You know, where can they like social media, all those sorts of things?
Yeah, social media, our website, beaglefreedomaustralia.org, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok when I remember to do TikTok. All that stuff.
Excellent. We'll put all of those in the show notes so that people can easily find you and support you and keep up to date with what you're doing. But is there any final messages that you'd like to leave our listeners with about animals used in research?
You know, they're individuals, basically. They're not statistics. They're not tools. They're individuals. They've all got personalities and they're all different, just like us humans. You know, we talk about how much animals are not like humans, so the testing can't be extrapolated to human health, but personality-wise, they're a lot like us in that they're so different from each other. So just, you know, keep that in mind and be patient. If you do adopt an animal, whether it's a research animal or not, be patient. That's all.
That is a very beautiful message to finish off a very moving episode. Like I'm seriously sitting here trying not to tear up because some of the stories that you've shared with us, and especially about the room that you're creating. Oh my goodness, that just sounds amazing. We would love to see the progress of the room because I think that's going to be just brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. I'd love to share it. Yeah, we're right at the start stages at the moment. So
yeah, perfect. Please share any photos or videos with us. We'd love to see it come
and we'll
together.
share them across all of the social media because, you know, you need to be, the world needs to see what you're doing. This is amazing. But Nikki, thank you so much for taking time to be with us this morning. We've loved having you on and you have taught me so much more about what's going on and I really am grateful. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Hopefully our listeners learn a lot from this episode as well, because I think animals used in research is still one of those topics that maybe isn't talked about a lot. In the vegan movement, we tend to focus on farmed animals and kind of forget about animals used in research and entertainment. So it is nice to have an episode really dedicated to that and sharing the stories of these animals. So thank you so much for that.
No worries.
So, folks, that brings us to the end of yet another inspiring episode. I say that every single time, but this is why we do the podcast, because we walk away feeling inspired and enriched and learning so much, and we want to share that with everybody. So, Nikki, thank you so much for being with us. You've been an amazing guest on here today. And, folks, we look forward to seeing you all in our next episode. So, thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Catch you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the Vegan Compass podcast, unveiling truths, inspiring change.
Be sure to follow us on social media at @thevegancompass_podcast. See you next time.